She didn't mean to get that close. Or maybe she did. 1 second they were arguing in the dim hallway, and the next her fingers brushed his wrist, light, unhurried, almost accidental. But the look she gave him, that wasn't accidental at all. It held a quiet fire, the kind that makes a person forget what's smart and remember what's dangerous. He'd been through enough to know better. She leaned in just enough to whisper, "Trust me." And somewhere deep inside, something colder answered back, "Don't." He wasn't the type to fall for soft words or soft eyes, not anymore. Life had carved too many warnings into him, betrayals dressed as tenderness, promises that dissolved once the lights were off. Yet here she was, standing close enough that he could feel the warmth rising from her skin, close enough that her breath skimmed his jaw. She carried her own secrets, the kind she kept tucked behind half smiles and quick glances away. He could sense them, heavy and unspoken, shaping the space between them. Still, something pulled him toward her. Maybe it was the way she held her ground, like she refused to let the world dim her. Maybe it was the hint of fragility hiding behind her confidence, or the way her voice softened when she said his name. Whatever it was, it made resisting her feel impossible, and trusting her feel reckless. She stepped back just a little, giving him room to breathe, but not enough to break the tension. Her hand lingered for a second too long before slipping away. He felt the loss more than he expected. Her eyes searched his, not with desperation, but with a quiet plea he didn't understand yet. Something about her made him feel like he was standing at the edge of a choice that could burn him, or save him. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, echoing the storm rising between them. She looked at him one more time, lips parting as if she was about to confess something that would change everything. But she stopped herself, swallowing the truth, leaving him suspended in the silence she left behind. And just when he thought she'd finally walk away, she turned back with a faint, knowing smile, one that felt like a dare. She didn't walk far. Just a few steps down the hallway before she paused, her hand resting against the wall as if she needed it to steady herself. He could still feel the ghost of her touch on his wrist, warm, delicate, more dangerous than anything he'd survived so far. For a moment he considered letting her go, letting the moment dissolve like all the others he'd run from. But something about the way her shoulders rose and fell, the quiet tension in her breath, pulled him toward her. He followed, slow and hesitant, until he stood just behind her. Close enough to sense her, but not close enough to touch. "You can't say things like that," he murmured, voice low, the weight of honesty slipping through the cracks. "Not when you know what I've been through." She turned, eyes soft but searching. "I know," she whispered. "But you look at me like you want to believe me. Even when you pretend you don't." That hit deeper than she could know. He looked away for a second, jaw tightening. She stepped closer, almost testing him, her presence warm but careful. When her fingers brushed his forearm, barely, like a feather deciding where to land, he didn't pull back. He should have. He didn't. "Why does it scare you so much?" she asked. Not teasing. Not challenging. Just wanting to understand. "Because," he said, meeting her eyes finally, "I don't want to fall into something that disappears the moment I reach for it." Her breath hitched, just faintly. "I'm not planning to disappear." He didn't answer. Instead, the silence grew full of everything they weren't saying, full of the storm inside him that matched the one outside the window. She moved another fraction closer. The distance between them shrank until he could feel the warmth of her body in the air, a quiet magnetic pull neither of them tried to break. Her hand rested lightly on his chest, not claiming him, just being there. Present. Real. His heart pounded against her palm, betraying everything he tried to hide. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. She just looked at him like he was something fragile and valuable at the same time. He raised his hand, slow, uncertain, and brushed a stray strand of her hair behind her ear. The touch was gentle, almost reverent. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, leaning into it before catching herself. They stayed like that, suspended in something warm and dangerous, something that felt like the start of a truth neither of them was ready to fully face. And still, either stepped away. She felt his breath before she felt his touch, warm, uneven, the kind that gave away everything a person tried to hide. His hand was still near her cheek, fingers hovering as if deciding whether to stay or retreat. It would have taken just an inch, a slight shift forward, and their lips would have been close enough to feel the shape of each other's breath. But he hesitated, jaw clenched, eyes full of things he wasn't ready to say. She noticed. Of course she did. You always stop right before it matters, she whispered. Not accusing. Just tired. Maybe hurt. He exhaled slowly, stepping back only an inch, but enough for the air to cool between them. It's not that I don't want. He stopped, biting off the rest before it escaped. Her eyes softened, but there was something guarded in them now, a quiet wall rising brick by brick. You think trusting me is a risk, she murmured. But trusting yourself scares you more. That hit a deeper place than she realized. Or maybe she did realize, maybe she always did. Maybe that's why he was afraid of her. He looked away, staring at the floor like it might hold the answers. You don't know everything, he said finally. Then tell me, she urged, taking a slow, careful step toward him. I'm right here. He almost did. The words sat heavy on his tongue, the truth pressing against his chest like a weight he couldn't keep carrying. But the closer she moved, the harder it became to speak. Not because she intimidated him, but because she made him want things he'd sworn not to want again. She reached out, her fingertips brushing his hand, light testing. He reacted instantly, his fingers closing around hers before he even realized he was doing it. For a moment, they just stood there, hands barely linked, like two people trying to learn how to breathe in the same space. But then he pulled back. Too fast. Too sharp. Like the moment scared him. Her breath trembled. Not angry. Just quietly wounded. You don't have to run from me, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I'm not running, he said, though it sounded like a lie even to him. I'm just trying not to make a mistake. She stepped back, not far, but enough to protect herself. So you think wanting me is a mistake? The silence that followed was thick, heated, almost suffocating. His chest rose and fell, eyes locked on hers, something hungry and conflicted burning in them. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The way they stared at each other said everything neither of them could speak. The air between them felt alive, almost vibrating. Every sound, the soft hum of the hallway light, the distant rumble of thunder, seemed magnified, echoing the tension coiled between them. He could feel it in the weight of her gaze, in the small, deliberate movements she made toward him. She wasn't just close, she was unavoidable. Magnetic. Dangerous in the way that made his heart ache and his mind race all at once. She stepped forward, just a fraction, and the space between them shrank to a whisper of possibility. Her hand hovered near his chest again, fingers trembling slightly, as if daring him to reach for her, or warning him not to. He swallowed hard, the sound loud in his own ears. Words lined up, hesitated, then vanished, leaving only the pulse of their proximity to speak. You're hard to ignore, she said softly, voice low, almost trembling. Her eyes searched his, flickering with vulnerability and something deeper, something he didn't know how to name but recognized instantly. He wanted to respond, to say something clever or reassuring. Instead, he just breathed, felt the brush of her hair against his jaw as she leaned slightly closer, and let the silence do the work. Silence had become their language, more intimate than anything they could have said aloud. Her fingers grazed his arm this time, just a trace, and it was enough to make him shiver. He wanted to close the distance, to let the heat that had been building for weeks finally have a voice. But something held him back, not fear of her, not even fear of the consequences, but fear of wanting her too much. You're dangerous, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Not a warning, not a tease, just truth. Her breath hitched. I could say the same to you, she replied, and the words hung between them like a flame in the dark. The air was heavy with the unspoken, and the warmth radiating from her nearly consumed him. He could feel her pulse at his fingertips, could sense the quiet desperation in the way she waited for his next move. They stood frozen, just inches apart, hearts hammering, breaths mingling. Time felt suspended, stretched thin by longing. Everything inside him ached to reach out, to close the space, to let the quiet intensity of their connection finally speak. Yet neither moved. And in that suspended moment, when the world outside ceased to exist, when everything that wasn't them dissolved into the electric air, the room seemed to hold its breath with them. Rain tapped gently against the window, a soft percussion that filled the otherwise quiet room. The warm glow of a single lamp cast golden pools of light across the space, tracing the curve of her jaw, the line of his shoulders, the space between them that had felt infinite for weeks. Every inch of proximity between them carried weight, years of caution, of heartache, of unspoken desire, and now it was breaking, slowly, deliberately, into something breathtaking. She reached for him without thinking, fingers threading through his hair, the gesture electric in its simplicity. He felt it immediately, a tremor running through his chest, through his arms, through every nerve ending that had been coiled tight for too long. He leaned into her touch, letting his forehead rest lightly against hers. Their breaths mingled, soft, warm, unsteady, telling the stories their words could not. Finally, she whispered, and it was both confession and relief. Her lips were near his ear, close enough for him to feel the heat of her breath. He closed his eyes at the sound, letting it wash over him like rain on the skin, steady and cleansing. Time seemed to suspend itself. Outside, the storm raged softly against the glass, but inside, the world had shrunk to the space they occupied, to the brush of her hand along his chest, to the quiet, urgent rhythm of their breathing. His hands traced the line of her back, not possessively but reverently, as if memorizing the feel of her, the heat she radiated. Every heartbeat spoke a word neither of them dared say aloud. Their foreheads rested together now, her lips hovering just above his, and the electricity between them was nearly tangible. Every shift, every trembling breath, every small sigh, spoke of longing and surrender and the taste of freedom after restraint. His hands found her waist, her fingers entwined with his, and suddenly, the months of tension, of hesitation, of walls built too high, melted into the room's golden haze. She tilted her head, letting her breath melt into his, and he responded in kind, letting their closeness speak the words they had been too afraid to voice. The storm outside became a background symphony to the storm within, the heat of their connection, the ache of waiting, the beauty of finally giving in without fear. No words were necessary. Every brush of skin, every lingering gaze, every subtle shift carried the poetry of two hearts finally aligned. They did not move too fast, did not rush. Instead, they allowed the moment to stretch, full and intoxicating, savoring the taste of intimacy that existed purely in presence, in closeness, in shared vulnerability. And as the night deepened, the rain fell softer, their bodies quiet but speaking, and the room seemed to hold them suspended, wrapped in warmth and the kind of longing that had been worth every second of restraint. Morning light filtered softly through the curtains, painting the room in muted gold and gray. The warmth of the night lingered like a memory pressed against his skin, but now the air was heavy with silence. She lay beside him, her hair tangled across the pillow, her eyes half open, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Words felt inadequate after everything that had happened, too small for the magnitude of what they'd shared, too clumsy to capture the tremor of connection still thrumming between them. He watched her, tracing the curve of her jaw with his gaze, noting the faint lines of sleep around her eyes. A smile tugged at the corner of her lips, quiet and unassuming, and it stirred something deep inside him, a mix of awe, fear, and desire. He wanted to reach for her, to ask the questions his pride and caution had long silenced, but instead he stayed still. Letting her exist there, in the calm aftermath, seemed enough for now. She stirred, shifting closer, and the brush of her hand against his chest made his heart jump unexpectedly. "Morning," she murmured, voice soft, tentative. "Morning," he replied, though his throat felt tight. There was something unspoken in the way they avoided each other's eyes, a delicate dance of acknowledgement and restraint. Last night had been a revelation, a surrender, but the weight of reality pressed against it now. Was it love? Was it relief? Or was it merely the hunger of two people finally allowing themselves a taste of what had been forbidden? Before he could answer, the door creaked. A shadow fell across the floor, and both of them stiffened. A voice called softly from the hallway, unfamiliar yet insistent. The unexpected intrusion jolted the fragile peace, a reminder that the world outside had not paused for them. Her fingers found his, lacing with his almost instinctively, as if seeking reassurance. He squeezed gently, and in that small gesture, everything unspoken, the uncertainty, the longing, the quiet affirmation, was felt more deeply than words could ever capture. The visitor's voice drew closer, and yet, in the midst of the sudden tension, their connection remained unshaken. The night's intimacy had carved a new space between them, one that neither fear nor intrusion could erase. They were tethered now, not just by desire, but by the shared acknowledgement of vulnerability, by the courage to exist fully in each other's presence, even when the world threatened to intrude. And as they sat together in that quiet morning, holding on to the remnants of last night, both knew that whatever came next, it would be different. Raw, human, undeniable. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside washed in soft morning light. They sat together on the edge of the quiet street, shoulders brushing, hands loosely intertwined. Words had been said and unsaid, and now silence carried a warmth that neither had expected but both had craved. He leaned his forehead against hers, eyes closing, letting the closeness speak the language they had built over nights of tension, longing, and whispered confessions. "You're still here," she murmured, a trace of wonder in her voice. "I'm not going anywhere," he replied softly, letting the weight of certainty settle between them. The memories of near misses, hesitant touches, and restrained longing had shaped them, but they no longer held power over the present. What mattered now was the choice they had made, to stay, to trust, to feel without fear. Her hand moved to rest lightly on his chest, fingertips tracing the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. He felt it, a pulse that mirrored her own, slow and deliberate, a quiet testament to connection and commitment. The tension that had once coiled between them like a live wire was gone, replaced by the ease of knowing they belonged, at least for this moment, to each other. They spoke little, for words would have been superfluous. Instead, the intimacy lingered in shared glances, in the subtle brush of lips against foreheads, in the small comfort of breathing in the same space. Time stretched gently around them, every second infused with a tenderness that no storm, no hesitation, could undo. As the morning light spilled over them, the world seemed to hush, giving space to the quiet certainty that had taken root. They were not perfect, nor were their lives free from complications, but in this delicate moment, they had found something rare: peace, trust, and the soft, undeniable warmth of hearts choosing one another. And when they finally pulled apart, it was with a lingering closeness, a sense that this chapter was theirs and theirs alone, a memory they would carry, fragrant and enduring, in the quiet corners of their hearts.